Have you ever had that feeling that you are just brimming with potential, but for some reason you're stuck? You look around and you see everyone else moving forward, building their lives, while you feel like you're still waiting in the wings for your real story to start. Okay, let's dive into a really common psychological trap that keeps so many talented people from ever truly growing up. Wow, okay, that's a pretty provocative thought, isn't it? But it points to something really deep, a pattern that's often totally unconscious that might just explain why your relationships, and maybe even your career, feel like they're just stuck on repeat. Let's break this down.
All right, to really get what's going on here, let's start with a scenario. And it's a scenario that I think is going to feel very, very familiar to a lot of you. We'll call this section the magic that vanishes. It all starts with what feels like an incredible, magical spark.
You know the feeling. It's electric, almost like something out of a movie. They get all your jokes, they seem to understand your biggest dreams, and for the first time in maybe a long, long time, you feel completely and totally seen.
And this right here, this is the absolute key. It's not just about attraction, it's this feeling of safety, this deep sense of coming home. They don't judge you for being a little messy or for having these huge, maybe unrealistic ambitions. It feels just like unconditional love. And then it happens. Maybe they have a slightly annoying laugh, or they get stressed out about their job, or maybe you just get closer. All of a sudden, they stop being this perfect fantasy and become a real, flawed human being.
And boom, just like that, a switch flips. The fascination is completely gone. The person who felt like your soulmate just an hour ago now seems, well, ordinary. And the only thing you can think about is escape. If this whole cycle sounds familiar, trust me, you are not alone. There's a name for this.
So, that familiar pattern, that intense fascination followed by that sudden overwhelming urge to run away, it isn't just some weird quirk you have. It actually has a name. So in this next section, let's meet the forever child, or as it's known in psychology, the pure eternus.
The pure eternus, or the forever child. It's basically an adult who, on the inside, is still a teenager just kind of waiting for life to happen to them. And what's so fascinating is how this psychological profile gets created in the first place.
Well, according to Jungian psychology, it often comes from a pretty specific family dynamic. So on one hand, you might have an overprotective mother who makes her child the absolute center of her universe, telling him he's special, he's destined for greatness, but without ever actually teaching him how to achieve it. And then that's often paired with a father who is either physically absent or just emotionally distant, so he fails to provide that model of what it means to be a grounded, responsible adult. The child never really graduates from that protective bubble of pure potential.
Does any of this start to ring a bell? The forever child can seem really impressive when you first meet them. They want to talk about changing the world, about philosophy, about grand, abstract ideas, but they absolutely hate the day-to-day grind. Their brain is just wired for the dopamine hit of fantasizing, not for the slow, steady progress of reality. They're always the artist who's about to be discovered, or the entrepreneur who's just about to launch. Potential is always, always just around the corner, but it somehow never arrives. This feeling of being paralyzed by your own potential, it can be a little hard to grasp, but there is a fantastic metaphor that makes it all crystal clear. In this section, let's explore what it feels like to be trapped at the bus stand. It's a really powerful image for a life that's stuck in neutral. I want you to imagine that your life isn't a single path forward, but instead, it's a giant bus station, and you're just standing there, in the middle of it all, ready to go somewhere incredible.
And there are hundreds of buses lined up, all waiting, and each one has a different destination. You see one bus going to startup success. Another one is headed to the great American novel. Over there is the bus for deep, lasting relationship. The options feel absolutely infinite. It's exhilarating.
But here is the trap. To choose one of those buses, to get on one path, you have to let all the other buses leave without you. Committing to the startup means you can't also decide to move to another country tomorrow. The pueria aeternus is terrified of closing those doors. That fear of losing out on all that other potential is what keeps them wandering around the bus station forever, without ever actually getting on a single bus.
And this chart, this just perfectly illustrates the core paradox here. In their mind, their potential is at 100%. They could do anything. They feel it. But in reality, their actual progress, the tangible things they've achieved, is hovering right around zero. You see, they live in the fantasy of that 100%, so they never have to face the difficult, messy reality of that 0%.
So if you're the one who's stuck in that bus station, how do you get out? How do you escape this trap of endless potential? Well, the good news is there is a way forward. In our final section, we'll look at why the way out is through. But I have to warn you, the solution is not what the forever child wants to hear.
The psychologist Carl Jung actually laid out the cure, and it's deceptively simple. It really just boils down to these two things. First, you have to commit to long and, yes, boring work. And second, you have to take responsibility for something or someone besides yourself. Let's unpack that.
Okay, let's look at step 1. Pretty much every meaningful project in life follows this kind of curve. Day 1 is pure excitement, that big dopamine rush. But then comes the grind. It gets repetitive, it gets really difficult. You hit these long plateaus where you feel like you're not making any progress. The pure eternist quits right here. They jump off to find the next new exciting thing. But real growth, real mastery, that only happens when you push through the grind and the plateau.
This is the ultimate mindset shift. You have to retrain your brain to see boredom not as a sign that you're on the wrong path, but as a sign that you are on the exact right one. It's the medicine you need, even if you absolutely hate the taste.
And this leads us directly to step 2. A child's world operates from a place of desire. Their guiding question every minute of the day is, what do I feel like doing right now? But an adult, a truly mature individual, operates from a world of duty. Their question is different. It's what needs to be done, regardless of how they happen to feel about it.
And this is not some abstract concept. This means putting yourself in a position where other people actually rely on you. When there's real money on the line, when clients are waiting on you, when your family depends on you, you can no longer afford the luxury of asking what you feel like doing. Your nervous system is forced to engage, you're pulled into reality, and that is when you finally grow up.
And ultimately, it really just comes down to this choice. The years are going to pass no matter what we do. You will get older. But growing up, that's an active decision. It's the decision to finally get on the bus.
So you have to ask yourself, are you content to just stay at the bus stand, dreaming of all the incredible places you could go? Or are you ready to choose a destination, to embrace the long and, sometimes boring journey, and finally become the person you were always meant to be? The choice, as always, is yours.